creating that culture is not a one size fits all strategy anymore. If you really want to retain people, that becomes a very important aspect to increase your attention as well. So, what are your thoughts on these dynamics? That how do you manage such a variety of, like, it's a platter of people and different thought processes as well? How do you create the right culture which fits for everybody's needs?
See, diverse workforce is the thing which is going to be with us, right? We'll have employees, global workforce across geographies working together for the same mission, for the same purpose. I think one important aspect that we all have to keep in mind is embrace the culture that they actually come in with, right?
Welcome to Advantage Engage, a podcast where we talk to leaders, learn about their journeys, and get inspired by them. My name is Smriti. I'm the co founder and CEO of AdvantageClub.ai, an AI powered rewards recognition, engagement, and well being platform. Today, we have an amazing person with us. We have Shantala Brahmadev, who is the HR head of HGS Digital. Uh, she has 18 years of experience in the HR industry, and I'm super excited to have her here with me. Welcome, Shantala. Welcome to.
Thank you so much, Smriti. Thank you for inviting me.
No, that's it's. We're so excited, and especially in this rainy day of Bangalore, you came here and you made it, and thank you for coming. So Shantala, would love to learn more about your journey. Of course, we know a lot about you, but would love to have our viewers learn more about you as well. So tell us about your journey. How did you get into HR, and how has your career path been till now?
Okay, a quick background. I'm a science student. I did my BSc biotechnology, and then it was in my third year of yeah, my graduation is when I realized I probably will not be excelling well in the career that I have chosen right now. So there should be something else that I should go for. And then it's happened to strike me that why not MBA? Because at that point in time, there were a few organizations which were excelling in, uh, you know, uh, so what do you say, in science and in research and all of that. Probably that was not my cup of tea. And then why not get into the same organization but in the management role? And that's when MBA struck to me. And when I was doing MBA, I kind of learned that I am pretty good with people. Okay, I've come from a small town and then I came to Bangalore for my higher educations. And then the way that I kind of, went along with people, I made friends. And then in college, I was heading some of the committees. So that's when I said, okay, HR maybe is my zone. I should get in there. And I got couple of campus interviews and then I got into the HR field. My first assignment was in talent acquisition. Okay, very interesting. And that was a time when there was a recession which was going in, right? So a lot of people were losing jobs, but there were a lot of many organizations which was also ramping up. So very interesting time for me to start my career. And then I would like to say one instance which happened was that it was in my second year of my career, where we had a quarterly recognition, and then it was actually the CEO has flew down from US, and then it was kind of a big deal at that point in time. CEO say award Lena and all of that. All the winners in that quarter were my hires. Okay, and then I was also one of the winners in one of the categories there. So it was like a very proud moment saying that okay, I've hired the best of the best, and I'm also here in the best category. So I felt yes, this is the place that I have to be in. I think the eye for a talent that I have, and then the success it has actually given to the business and also making someone's individual career is where I felt, okay, this is the place that I want to kind of continue. And of course, HR has many functions. And in my second year of career, I said, okay, talent acquisition, let me pursue more. And then what next was something that I was actually thinking through. So that was like an interesting eye opener to me. And very recently, in one of my family functions, it so happened that one of the hires that I made at that point in time had lost his job. Okay, and for me, getting that higher was actually my target. Uh, and then I met him. Then he still remembers me with my name, the company that I worked with. And then he introduced me to his family. Right. I think then the introduction kind of went saying that, she's the one who gave me my career back. Oh, that was the moment that I felt so wow, saying that, okay, this is something that, you can do. And this is all we should be kind of doing as HRs, where we make careers, we help people to make their careers. So that's the moment that I think, yeah.
No, amazing. And that's one of the less talked about things in HR, right? That one, you need to have a very good eye for talent. It's not just like a tick in the box, especially if you're in recruitment or talent acquisition, that you're just filling positions out and hiring people. It's also about finding that right eye for talent, and especially the point you talked about relocating people in case they have, so many people have lost their jobs, and it's just it's very fulfilling as an individual if you're able to, one, get the right people for your organization, and get the right people also find the right roles in case something bad happens. So yes.
I think that's a very interesting point that you brought, right? The tick, right, where I have to, kind of take care of the numbers, let me meet my targets, is something that most of us probably in the initial days of a career that we always think about. That, but I think the larger fact, the larger picture, the talent that you're bringing to the organization, the talent that actually create business value, and the same talent when they move up in their career and then they become good leaders, that's different aspect altogether, right? Like most of my hires that I've done in the past, I'm still in touch with most of them, and they're actually doing pretty well in their career today, and some of them are holding a senior leader positions. So which kinds of, gives you that satisfaction. It's quite fulfilling saying that yes, this is something that you're able to make a mark for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I was reading this LinkedIn post by somebody, and there's a very good point. They said that, somebody said that, though, why did you say hire this person in my organization and they moved out and this and that? You don't own people, right? So people decide whether they want to stay in an organization or not basis their organization's culture and the kind of people they work around with. And I think that be, kind of my next point as well, around building that culture, right? And when you think about different types of organizations, and especially say just say edges for an example, right? You guys have like 16, 18,000 employees. They're spread across various geographies. You've had global roles your entire life. Different organizations, different countries, different cultures, people come from different backgrounds as well. Now we have this nice angle of different generations as well. So creating that culture is not a one size fits all strategy anymore. And if you really want to retain people, that becomes a very important aspect to increase your attention as well. So what are your thoughts on these dynamics, that how do you manage such a variety of, like, it's a platter of people and different thought processes as well? How do you create the right culture which fits for everybody's needs?
See, diverse workforce is the thing which is going to be with us, right? Will we have employees, global workforce across geographies working together for the same mission, for the same purpose? Uh, I think one important aspect that we all have to keep in mind is embrace the culture that they actually come in with, right? There are a lot of things that we can learn from each other. So I think that is something that needs to be ingrained in our employees, saying that how do you embrace, how do you kind of respect each other cultures? Uh, Having said that, there will also be lot many differentiations which comes into picture. There will be geographies who are not okay to disclose their birth dates, right? But there will be geographies who will celebrate birthdays because for them that is something that they really enjoy about.
Nowadays, we have birth weeks and birth months also.
So I mean, so we'll have to kind of give their personal space, but ensure that everybody is kind of working together. Collaboration is the key, right? Whether I'm working out of India, working out of US or Jamaica or China, wherever I am, right? Collaboration is the key. So, as HR, I think it's very important for us to kind of build in frameworks where people are collaborating with each other naturally, right? Do not make it saying that, okay, you know what? Now you have two teams. You have a team in US, you have a team in India. Chalo, saath mein kaam karo. No, that wouldn't work, right? Maybe the work will happen, you will get delivered what you want to deliver, but the people may not be actually enjoying the journey. So that's why it's very important. So, one thing that I would like to call out is one initiative that we took in order to ensure that our global workforce is collaborated and then they kind of come together, is that we introduced a month called gratitude month, right? And it can be practiced throughout, but just to enhance and to just to embrace that. And that was around the same time when you have Thanksgiving in the US and when you have Diwali in India. It's mostly coincides the timings, so everybody is in the celebration mode already. So it's a very simple thought and a very simple framework which says, that throughout the month, you will actually thank each and every employee or your colleague or your peer who's actually helped you, right? It could be physical thank you cards for people who are there in the same ground. It can be thank you cards that we are there in the platform. Plus, we do team lunches, and we do team lunches where teams in the US and in India, with whatever the virtual platforms are available, they kind of, share things, share thoughts. Throughout the month, there is some or the other celebrations. And end of that month, we end it with a gala event, which is actually a virtual event, where we bring in both the cultures. We highlight whatever the keys were, whatever the highs that we had in that year. What are we looking forward for the next year? Employee shares experience and all of that. Very important aspect there that I actually want to say is that during that time, our recognition numbers go really high, right? We hit 70 to 80% recognition. The utilization is high. And then the cross country collaboration and then appreciation becomes more. That kinds of sets a platform for the next year when they have to start. So that is a continued effort that we are trying to do, and it is working pretty well in our organizations today.
Yeah, no, I think, and you put up a very important point around recognition and gratitude week and why it's important, irrespective of whether you're a hybrid setup or whether you're 20 countries or single country or 500 employees or 50,000 employees. It's important to set that tone of recognition, um, at least once a year, if not more than that, right? Are there any specific recognition practices you've seen? Of course, like gratitude day is one, which you feel have made a difference, and like people have actually come to you and said, "Oh, this was great," which the organization did, and we really felt gratified about it.
See, traditionally, when we have started, at least when I started of my career, recognition used to be in a framework, which means there is calendarized, right? Okay, there is a quarterly award, there is an annual award, there could be a monthly award, right? And mostly it is top down, right? My manager says, or my delivery head says, or my program head actually recognizes for the work that has been done. And that's when, somebody gets recognized. And also, we know for the fact that we all have to operate within the budgets that is allocated. So there are numbers associated to that. But I think what we kind of had forgotten the fact for is that recognition has to be throughout the year, right? Recognition has to be across all the levels and empower your people, right? So that they can recognize their seniors, they can recognize their peers, and then they feel very fulfilled and satisfied when they also do that, right? So we introduced one where your team member actually can recognize your manager. So there will be a category of award where your team members write citations for the managers, and the best manager gets the award. So there is the onus on the employee saying that, okay, how well I can write. What is that my manager has brought it to the table for us, right? Then there is a pure recognition that at any point in time that I felt that Smriti has done a fabulous job in the project. She's helped me. She's worked through a lot of things. And I really feel she needs to get recognized. I can give you a pat on the back any time of the year, right? So that is a culture that we build throughout the year, not for a particular time. and that has been welcomed pretty well. And I have seen that people feel empowered, right? Because it's not always my manager will give me because he thinks or she thinks that I am eligible for this. So, but it is not. It is the team member also feels that there is another person in the team who's kind of worked hard, and I should kind of recognize. So that is something that my employees have come to me and said that thank you so much for introducing this. And recognition need not always to be associated with rewards, right? Thanks a bunch, thank you cards. Those are some of the softer aspects that has been introduced, which is also kind of appreciated well. I see in my employees' desk, there's a thank you card pinned up where, they get the thank you cards from their employees. And probably it's a very dull moment for them on that day. And then they read the card, they feel very energized and they say, okay, let me get back. So those are some of the things, my employees have come to me and told me saying that, thank you so much for introducing some of these things.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's also like we always talk about metrics and KRAs and, ROIs. This is one of those soft ROIs, right? The stories which come out of how people have really felt when they feel seen and heard and appreciated at work. And you can't link it with numbers, but it's like it, it's a feeling, and nothing can beat that. So, but yeah, stories is one part, but management needs data, analytics, numbers. So let's talk about data and analytics. And uh, can you maybe talk about instances where you felt that maybe data and analytics or insights have helped you improve certain uh, engagement programs you've created, or wherever you do data led enablement for employees? Would love to understand, how do you marry data with these stories?
Okay. Data has become a very integral part of our life, right? And data and its analysis can just really make and break a lot many things for us. And it kinds of leads the way that we think about many aspects, whether it's my strategy, whether it is my framework that I want to implement, or anything that is then there. It kinds of really backs up. Uh, Sometime back is where we were looking at the attrition, right? And it was quite high in one of my organizations that I worked. And hiring those engineers from the market wasn't easy because they come up with some special skills, niche areas, and then the hiring cost is much higher than, letting go or retaining people, which is always the case. So, what we did is, I think, with our analytics team, we did predictive analysis, right? It is about with the employee data that we have in hand, everything from the start date to his or her promotions to the performance reviews that they had, how many recognitions that they've had so far, how have they been in terms of their engagements levels today, how well have they participated in some of our town halls and things like that. All this data that we curated, and then we definitely came up with some analysis saying that who are your flight risk employees. And that data was not with the HR, that data was with the managers. So the manager has it in his laptop right there. If he wants to know how Shantala is doing, he just have to say Shantala and get all the informations. So the analysis gives you all the data and also predicts saying that, you know what, Shantala has been your top performer, but she's not been recognized once so far. So it could be one of the factors that you could think about because she's a top performer. I think it is important for you to recognize. Otherwise, it could also lead to an attrition risk. She she is a mediocre performance. She's got many awards. Maybe the assessment is something is not working well. Why don't you look at the data again? So it makes your managers think how I am actually taking care of my talent. Then our managers come back to HR. We have a conversation saying that what can be done, what can be dealt with. It gives you a comp data, market comp data, where do they place, etc. So we come up with some strategies where we could actually implement some of the retention strategy. Our attrition numbers just came down to 8% in a year's time. Of course, It's a continuous work in progress activity. But in that year, our attrition came down to 8%, which was definitely a value addition to the team, right? And I mean, many stories about data. And I keep telling this to my team whenever they make business presentations, whenever they are kind of presenting some things, you have the most important aspect in your hand, right? Data is there with you. You can just make and break businesses and careers. See what you can do about it. Just don't represent the data the way it looks, right? Do an analysis of what it makes and how does it actually turn value to a business is very key important.
Yeah, and you put up a very important point around linking data with your business objectives as well, right? So sometimes there might be certain attributes which people have, but it's not really that relevant for the business growth. And certain attributes you might not think are that important, but they're very, very relevant to the growth of the business. So do you think it makes sense to kind of link core business objectives, company values for any initiative which we run for employees?
I think that is the center, right? The key existence of us is because of business. And what is the business value that we bring in is very important, right? HR has to be part of the business. HR is not a separate function, right? Who is just policy makers, who will check the box and tells you saying that this is what policy says, this is what you have to do. You can't go. No, I think we'll have to figure out a way how we can accommodate business, ensure compliance is taken care, ensure we are taking care of employees. So I think we play a very critical role there. And then we actually have to bring that business value proposition. If we don't do that, then I don't think so. Then, we will be in the center of the organization. So it's very important. Business value is very important when we kind of look into any frameworks or any engagement strategies that we bring in, right? Again, don't be that checklist and the check mark HR, all right, who has to do things because, okay, in this year that I'll have to finish so many things. Now, what it actually brings in value is very important.
So now let's talk about this distributed workforce we were talking about earlier. The generational gap. It's insane what a gap we have among people today. So you have people maybe in their 50s working with people in their 20s, and you have kids, I have kids, and it's we can see the generational difference in that generation as well. So future, nobody knows how they're gonna be. So in that kind of a distributed workforce, in terms of generational gap, how do you think in aspects of culture or in aspects of employee engagement? Because what would work for, say, a 50-year-old will definitely not work for a 20-year-old today.
See, I think that's a true fact today. And try and implementing something that worked for somebody 10, 15 years back for the future workforce would definitely not work. In my view, the hierarchical needs have actually changed completely, right? The reason why my parents were working, my grandparents were working, or why I am working today, and why my daughter is going to work tomorrow is will be very different, right? If my father had taken car or he bought a car for himself at the age of 40 and 45, that was a bigger achievement. Today, kids, they get to the car in their second year, third year of your earning. So it's not a big deal at all. So today, I think the hierarchical need is not about money. It is not about, of course, there is recognition, but not recognition for the sake of recognition. Uh, it is about the purpose, the sense of purpose that we're going to create, the values that we're going to kind of, show to them. What is my mission? I just can't give a mission statement and then the purpose is not meeting with that, right? And these generations, they're quite vocal and they can actually come back and tell to us saying that, you know what, you said this, but you're making us do this. This isn't working at all. And I don't align with you. I think that alignment part, maybe, few generations did not, though they were not aligning, but it is okay. Let me do the work, right? Because I've come here to work, take my salary, then go back. I'm happy about it, right? Today, that alignment is very important. So, getting that alignment is so important today, right? So, if I'll give you a personal example of mine. Right now, the midterm exams are going for my daughter. So if I ask her a question, I rarely do. I really spend time with her to make her study and all of that. But just that the mom guilt comes into picture and say, okay, chalo, let's ask the questions. And if I ask the question to her, she will not give me the definition the way it is written in the textbook, but she will explain the fact that is actually have to be explained with the right keywords. But I have learned the way, matlab definition, just do the ratta, right? The process, dash, 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 right? But now, when I tell her, Niksha, this is not the way it is, this is how it is, why are you not saying that? Mama, no. I am telling you what is the important facts, the key important words. That is good enough, right? When you see such differences at home, work is no different, right? So it's very important for us to ensure that we change the way we have actually written policies, build our frameworks around, engagements around for different workforces. And what worked for us will not work for them. One size fits for all is not the thing, right? It is never the thing, but it is even more emphasized these days because the next generation workforce are quite vocal about what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah, I mean, our generation and even a generation above used to be more like, this is the company, this is the culture, this is what you're supposed to do. How do I fit into there? And now the new generation is more like, this is who I am, this is what my individuality is. Does this organization fit to me?
Yeah.
It's exactly the other way around.
So, I mean, I tell this to a lot of my interview panels when they are actually doing the interviews, right? It's not about you assessing the individual when they're coming into the organization. The individual is also assessing you. Will I fit into this culture? Will this be the mindset of the people who are actually I'm getting into? So it is an interview process both ways. So I think we have to be very cautious about what do we represent, what are we today. That has to change, right? If we don't change that, then we will become obsolete for the next workforce.
Yeah. And talking about the next workforce, if you look at 2030 or the upcoming future of work, what do you envision it to be, and what changes do you think will happen, whether it's on technology, whether it's people management? How do you think the future of work is going to look like?
I think the next 5 years, the technology landscape is going to change a lot, right? We've heard about AI the last year or last year, few years back, but we are seeing some of the implications of AI, which is actually happening today. It's both good and bad, right? Now, how do you embrace those changes is very important. Gone are the days where you will say that, everybody has to come to office. 9 to 5 is the work timings. You'll have to actually work through. No, I think it should be more on flexibility, productivity. Even though I don't come 9 to 5, right? I may start 11, I may end late, right? Or I may start in the afternoon. But is my productivity getting impacted because of that? Am I giving that flexibility to the workforce today? Because that is something which is very key. Sense of purpose is very important, right? And I think hybrid workplace is going to stay. Maybe it will take another generation to come and change something like that. Hybrid workplace is it's going to stay. Uh, I know that a lot of organizations who are calling their workforce back to work, ensuring there is a mandatory 4 days, mandatory 5 days, mandatory 3 days. That is because of the fact that they are thinking that if they are working from home, maybe my productivity is getting impacted. Maybe they are not, or maybe they are moonlighting, things like that. But how do I change some of those? How do I trust my employees, right? How do I build that trust is very important. Once you have that trust, how do you kind of have the technology around to ensure some of the aspects which we are thinking which can go grossly wrong is not happening, right? And how do you engage them, whether it is in office or outside office, is very important. Now engagement doesn't mean that let's play antakshari, let's have something fun in the office. Having fun in the office in the virtual setup is going to be the thing in the future. So how am I going to kind of bring those platforms into picture is very important.
No, absolutely agree. And it's interesting how fast the world is changing, right? It's like it feels like yesterday we were saying AI is the future, and today, like, I've stopped using Google. I use GPT for everything. So it's just very, very fast changing, fast paced developments which are happening. And I think as organizations, we need to keep up. Otherwise, we're going to lose our talent to the ones who do. So yeah, this was amazing, and thank you for sharing all your thoughts with me. And I'm sure the audience is gonna love it. Now I have some fun rapid fire questions for you. So my first question, and since we're talking about this future of work, right? If you had to rewrite one workplace rule, which is very standard for everyone, what is that one workplace rule you would rewrite?
Okay. There are many.
You can talk about multiple.
One, I think the fact that I told about flexibility, right? That's very important, right? We have to provide that flexibility, and I'm a believer of giving that flexibility so that the individuals use the flexibility with responsibility. That is something that I really kind of think that we should definitely change the way that we are doing things today. Um, the second aspect is meetings. I know no meetings cannot be the thing because meetings are some of the ingrained thing for us. Okay, something to be done, let's get into meeting. Something is not going, let's get into meeting. At least Friday, no meetings. So if you can just have that so that people can kind of focus on something for themselves, or they just are not so bogged on meetings. I have known some of my friends where Friday evening, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, they're on calls. Right. But in some of the geographies, after 4 or after 5 on a Friday, no calls, nothing. Laptop shut is shut, right? I'm going to be back only on Monday, unless it is a life and a death situation. Some of those things, if we can kind of bring in, it's actually good.
Yeah, and talking about geographies, my second question is, you've seen so many geographical cultures and worked with such a diverse workforce. Every geography and every culture has something very unique about them. So, what are those few unique or one or two interesting things which you liked about other cultures, which you would want to deploy in the rest of the cultures as well?
I mean, I definitely like Indian culture that we bring in, right? The family, the tradition, the friends, and all of that. I really love that.
Yeah, we're very social,
We're very
and
social,
yeah.
right? And everything we need our family and our friends always together. But something that I really liked is in Jamaican culture, right? In Jamaica, I think again they very much are close to personal connect, building relationships. All of that are very key for them as an individuals. In offices, they have something called commune lunches, right? Communal lunches. It's not like sit together, eat, and then chit chat and go. It's also about sharing the lumps that they have got, right? And it is like
It's a school thing.
it's a school thing, right? The relationships that you built in the school, the food that you've shared in the school, you still remember. So they share the food. And this is not with, same team and same team members. It is with departments that they do together. There's long tables, they sit together, eat. So what happens is you're breaking the silos, right? And you are allowing to collaborate. There are a lot of interdepartmental things that we actually have, right? अच्छा, HR ने ये बोला है, but finance is not agreeing to it. But because of this, there is a collaboration. There is actually a softer aspect that you've built among the employees. Things can get done faster with no obligations, right? With no escalations, because escalations is the big thing sometimes. So some of those things are kind of taken care. I definitely allow that aspect. And I mean, Jamaica is always fun. I love that factor as well, that there are always happy, go lucky employees. So that is something that I really like.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you share a meal, you kind of get rid of all your discrepancies, at least on the surface level, if not intrinsically. But yeah, cross team collabs become much easier. Like you said, two teams not agreeing with one another, just share a meal.
Correct.
And I love that thought. Huh. And the next rapid fire is, what is that one interesting thing about you that most people who know you don't know?
I think uh, there are two places or there are two things that I keep doing. And that is the time my creativity is on the higher side. One is while I'm cooking, all right? While I'm cooking, of course, I want to show my culinary skills in my dish that I'm bringing in. And my daughter is the biggest fan of whatever I cook. She says, Mama, this is the best, this is the best. But I also kind of think about work at that point in time, something that I really want to kind of do, introduce something. Then I kind of, send that to my team saying that, tuck, 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 can we do this? That's a quick one. And when I'm exercising, especially when I'm cycling, right, a lot of thoughts come to my mind because that's the me time that I have. And I kind of keep thinking about what are the things that we can bring in. That's a constant thing that I have. And then I kind of make a note of that. That's when my creativity is on its highest.
Yeah. Do you do you cook often or do you cook
I cook
occasionally?
daily.
Oh, you cook daily? How do you find the time to cook daily?
Somehow, because one, so here is another interesting fact. I never loved cooking. Okay, cooking was like the last thing that I would like to do. But then after my daughter, things have changed, and now I've started loving cooking. So I kind of try doing all new things. I used to tell my fellow colleagues saying that, Abhi pasta bhi, if you make at home, pizza bhi you'll make at home, then what is there for you to eat outside? But now the things have changed. Now I do all of that at home because I think I've learned that as my space where I can actually be much more creative.
Oh, very interesting. Wow. Okay. My next question is I know you've spoken about a few instances where in HR you've kind of helped people, uh, spotted the right talent, but has there been that one aha moment when you said, "Oh, this is why I love HR"?
Okay, I've got many aha moments, right? That validation, I think, happens continuously when your employees come to you and talk to you and tell you about what things that we have helped them to change, or if we have created some business value, all of that. But one moment that I definitely want to share is that women employees, when they come back from their maternity, they are juggling on many aspects, right? You're a new mother, I'm sure you know it. Right? Work, there is home, there is kids, and whatever said and done, I think in many places, and it still exists. It's not that everybody will have a great support system when a woman is working. And it is not easy for them to come, right? There's a guilt when you're at home saying that, is my work suffering? There is a guilt at work saying that, okay, am I giving enough attention to my kid? Am I doing enough? Is I'm doing enough is the constant thought that always they have. And I've seen many women employees when they come back to work after 2, 3 months or 4 months, they quit. Right? They burn out. They're saying that I am not able to do that. I think the easiest way for them is to quit a job than kind of seeing else, right? So then I kind of do counseling with them, saying that why do you want to quit? What is it that is bothering you today? And I tell them saying that, okay, these are some of the things that you can actually tweak yourself. These are some of the things that you can ask for help. Asking help is also something that you have to be told, which doesn't come naturally to everybody, right? So then we kind of, tell them, I kind of counsel them and I ask them why, what, etc., etc. And then it is not in one session, it kind of ends. I don't accept the resignations immediately. I kind of do this counseling for a couple of times. And then I have cases where they've actually come back and taken back their resignations. They've asked for some flexibilities. We worked it around and whatever that we could do. And then they're actually doing really well in the career, right? Some of them are doing so well. Every year, they call me on the same time and say, "Thank you so much. Had you not done this to me, I probably would have quit and I would be at home and maybe thinking that, that was a wrong decision." Right? So that it's so fulfilling for me, right? Personally, I'm a mother, right? I know the struggles. And somebody kind of going through the same struggle, if you're able to help, nothing like it. So it's very important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you said, not everybody has the same support system, but there are always ways around it. In most cases, I won't say in all. In some cases, there's no option, but in most cases, there are ways in which you can kind of make certain changes, get some household helps, and if you were quitting, you were anyways not gonna get that salary, so you can utilize that money to get help and kind of uh, continue to maintain your career. Because one of the things I've also realized as a new mother is, while of course work feels like an overhead, work also pulls you out of that monotony which comes with postpartum. And it's when PPD is not like a myth, it's not a joke, it's real. So like personally, what I felt is my work became a way to, even for some time, distract me from that monotony. And there is a lot of guilt, there is a lot of am I a good mother thought process, and a lot of elder relatives don't help there either. But you need another woman who has gone through this and has figured it out to help you figure it out, because nobody else is going to help you figure it out. I think it is very fulfilling, and kudos to you for
No, because I've also learned it right, and thanks to my support system, not just back at home, but also in my workplaces. I've had amazing colleagues who could, understand what I'm going through. I had my amazing seniors who could I go back and talk to them and say, hey, you know what? I'm going through this. What should I do? And everybody that I've met has actually helped me in shaping my career. And I think that's the least that we could do. And I mean, this is my request to all the women out there, right? Quitting is easy, right? But see what you can do. And that's the time that you're spending or going through that phase. It's a phase, right? If you are able to get through the phase, after that, there is no turning back.
Yeah, no, I love it. And my last rapid fire question is a fun one. So, what is the most interesting thing anyone has told you in an interview?
I don't remember anything that was told in an interview. But I think this is something is stuck right now with me for a long time. This is one of my seniors, and this is one of the catch ups that we were having. And then, end of the catch up, he said that two things which are going to be key. One is empathy. Second is studying your environment is going to be the key for anybody to grow in an organization or anywhere else. Uh, those two factors are for whoever it is high. For them, definitely career is a marathon that they will definitely succeed well in the careers. And I score high in that two, aspects. And then he said that definitely there's a lot many things that I can actually do as a leader, and I've got a long way in my career to go through. So that is, quite humbling to me. I really just felt very good about that.
Nice, nice, nice. No, this has been amazing, Shantala, and thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure our viewers are going to love this podcast. And once again, I just want to thank you for your time and coming here.
Thank you so much, Mati, for inviting me and giving me the chance to kind of share my personal experiences. I may have done it, in few places, but a lot many things actually brushed my memory today when I was talking to you. So it was very nice, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you.
So, this was Shantala, and we had a wonderful conversation with her today. Thank you so much for joining and watching in. And we have many other such episodes coming in. So, stay tuned and keep watching Advantage Engage.